what happened to JonBenét, who is responsible. And joining us now, JonBenét's dad, John Ramsey, is with us live here in Nashville. Great to see you, John. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, you're in here, you're surrounded by so many stories, investigators, cases. Your story of your daughter, like one of the biggest, but it's unsolved. Where are you on that?
That's a good question. We've tried for almost 28 years now to get the case in competent hands. You know, we knew the Boulder police were inexperienced. I don't fault them for that at all. It's fortunate they didn't have a homicide department. They didn't need one. That's a blessing to the town. But they refused help of people that could have helped in the very beginning, and up until recently have continued to refuse help.
Still to today?
As far as I know, we've not seen any indication that they've been willing to release the DNA evidence or the evidence that had been tested. What we'd like them to do is release the evidence to the FBI. Let the FBI have custody of the evidence. We believe there's items that have never been tested that were taken from the crime scene for DNA. We do have DNA that was found in early '97, in January. The initial report had a DNA sample that was recovered, unidentified male DNA. We were basically excluded as possible matches, and that was kept secret by the police back then because it conflicted with their conclusion, which they drew pretty immediately. And so we've been trying to get the case for years in competent hands. I don't care who it is, but there are obviously some very competent resources that could be brought to bear. So at a minimum, we would like the crime scene evidence, some of which we know has not been tested for DNA, put in the custody of the FBI. Period.
John, do you have a theory on what may have happened to your daughter?
Well, I subscribe to, there's been two scenarios put forth by two people I greatly respect. One was John Douglas, and the other was Lou Smith, who was a retired legendary homicide detective that was brought in by the DA to look at our case. John Douglas said this was someone who was very angry at you or very jealous of you. And I said, well, I couldn't have made anybody angry like that. He said, you may not even know him. You know, we were a small, big, fairly large company in a small town. We were in the newspaper. And so that's John's theory. Lou said, well, this is a kidnapping gone wrong. And I thought, well, those two conflict.
Right.
But somebody pointed out, no, they really don't. They don't necessarily need to conflict. They could be the same issues. And I thought, you know, you're right. They don't conflict.
What are your thoughts about the letter? I mean, for a lot of people, it always comes back to that strange letter.
Oh, it was bizarre. I mean, we couldn't figure out where the monetary amount they asked for didn't make any sense. It obviously had a message to convey. I think the way it was signed was bizarre. In a way, the 3 pages I've been told by experienced handwriting experts that with 3 pages of an exemplar, they get something to match to. They can match it 100% with that much of an exemplar to match to. So in a way, it was a gift if we could find a handwriting match. Of course, handwriting is not admissible in court, but
it's a great investigatory tool.
But it is, yeah, exactly. And they said if we can do it, give you 100% match because of the large sample we have, this 3-page bizarre note. And you know, there are some elements to it. One of the things they said, we'll call you tomorrow at 10. Well, I didn't know if tomorrow was the day we were in or was tomorrow. And so when 10 o'clock came along and they didn't call, the so-called detective that was there, so well, that was strange that John didn't get all excited and pull his hair out at 10 o'clock. But I at that time, thought 10 o'clock could very well be 10 o'clock tomorrow, which is what the notes said, tomorrow.
Right, because everything happened in the overnight hours.
Yeah, so I didn't know. I thought if I have to wait another 24 hours, that's going to be horrible torture. So anyway, it was a bizarre note. And to this day, we don't have a really good, but I mean, whoever did this is a monster, a subhuman monster. And I'm sorry to say it that way.
No, but it's true. And
anybody that would do this to a child.
There's something going on there that you can't relate to, that is completely unknown to regular folks.
Exactly. You can't make sense of it.
No.
Because it makes no sense.
So let's do this. John, you're going to stay with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. When we come back, we're going to continue to talk about the JonBenét case with John Ramsey. Plus, we're going to bring in our investigators to take a look. We'll be right back. We are live at Crimecon 2024 in Nashville, Tennessee.
I went to a very small high school, and everybody knew everybody there. And Gary was what we called an orbiter. He just would orbit around our groups and stuff. So we were classmates. We knew everybody at school. It was December 26th, and it was about midnight. And I get that phone call, and it's Gary's voice, and he's like, oh, I just heard, oh, little girl, oh. Like, it was the most terrifying. I'm getting goosebumps just now telling you guys this because it was terrifying. The next morning, I get to the LA Times on the newspaper on my front porch. It's, 6, 7 in the morning. I flip the newspaper open, and there it is on the back side. It says, girl 6 slain in Boulder, Colorado. And I knew something serious had happened that night. I go, wow, he actually killed a girl.
Absolutely jaw-dropping. That was Michael Vale talking about a call he got from a classmate, Gary Oliva, someone who was on some people's radar, but seemingly making a confession like before it's in the paper. And there was like very little follow-up to this, I believe. There's a confession letter in a note that he wrote. And of course, we're talking about the unsolved murder of JonBenét Ramsey. Still with us, JonBenét's father, John Ramsey, and joining us are investigators who all throughout the year help us out so much at Court TV. Joseph Scott Morgan, distinguished scholar of applied forensics, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, and host of the extremely popular Body Bags podcast.
Right.
And we've got Mike King, religious cult expert, retired police commander, host of the very popular Profiling Evil podcast, and author of the book Deceived. Great to have you both here. We're talking about JonBenét Ramsey. John is here with us. That confession, I don't understand how that doesn't become more of a focal point. I know there are false confessions in high-profile cases. John Mark Carr, I get it. But your thoughts about that, Joseph?
Well, exactly. One of the things that you have, particularly with a high-profile case, is that everybody wants attention, don't they? And you don't know what path any of these little markers along the way are going to take you down. And so the police have to be very, very careful in what they're saying. And my suspicion is, from a forensic standpoint, is that there is a lot of application of forensic science here that we don't know a lot about at this point in time as far as testing goes, what samples they have, what they're going to be testing against.
Is there any reason to not give everything to the FBI?
I don't think that there is. You know, why not go all in? You know, and that's always been my contention. Is, look, this has always been this festering thing that I've never been able to get past with JonBenét's case. Why not? Why not give people relief? I don't say closure because I don't think anybody actually ever gets closure, but relief from the pain of it all. And if it's that simple, engage with them, put their full force behind this thing, and let's bring it to a resolution. Either way, at least we'll know which way the wind's blowing.
If we try that and fail, then at least we've tried.
Yes, yep, and that's the way I feel about it as well.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think even just sitting here with John, it brings out this responsibility that I think government has to evolve. that this is no longer a time and place where you can just keep everything quiet, especially after 25 years, that you don't start to open the kimono a little and share a little information. We have seen this true crime community that we're taking part with tonight explode with information, intelligence, evidence, ideas, but we still have kind of these archaic belief systems that we got to keep it all in-house and we got to keep anyone else from seeing the secret files. And I get that you need to keep some things close to the vest so that you can use those at the proper time to impeach a potential suspect or to use at a pertinent time. But my gosh, I think it's time to start really taking advantage of all that's available and really collaborate instead of keeping all these closed communities of investigators or family or anyone else, Vinny.
That's right. I heard some applauding from the audience, Commander. That's right. That's right. Preach. I would love to ask you both, from looking at it from an investigator's point of view, as you both are, what is the thing, if you had to touch on one thing today that troubles you the most about that case when we think about the evidence? What keeps you up when you think about that case?
I'll go first. I have to start at the beginning. I think, for me, being someone who teaches crime scene techniques and processing and all that sort of thing, and this ground has been covered extensively. It's the idea that we should be handling every scene, every time the same way, that you hold every case to the same standard. And one of the things that's really interesting here is that with Boulder, maybe they never thought that a case like this would happen. And people get caught with their pants down all the time. The fact is, it can visit anybody. It doesn't have to be a big city, a big community. So you do the same thing every single time from the perspective of there are certain procedures that you go through. Security of a scene, for instance, clearing a house, going through the house as a police officer to make sure that you've covered everything. And remember, this did not start off as a homicide investigation. This started out as a child was missing. And even in those circumstances, where have you looked? Where haven't you looked? That sort of thing. So it all starts at that moment in time where you look back in time, you say, only if we had done this. That's for me.
And I love being on with Joe Scott because I really find I learn every time I listen to him. But the thing that really gets me is that we have a problem in the industry where we oftentimes won't ask for help from the right people, perhaps even at the right or the wrong time. And in cases like this, it's always good to get a new set of eyes looking on it. I mean, I think back to a college paper that I wrote where I was convinced I had created the masterpiece of the century, only to have more red lines on that thing when a professor looked at it. So why not get other disciplines, something that might be completely outside of the criminal justice world even, to consider some of these things? But then we got to go back and look at these pools of possibilities and really start to analyze what makes them really rise to the surface versus somebody else. Because when we're dealing with predators like this that we're seeing come out even recently, we have to consider sometimes it's all about fantasy and they're just dreaming up things. Other times they might be serious contenders for what's wrong here. So,
and John, we only have about a minute left here, a little less than a minute. From your perspective, is there anything that gives you hope in getting an answer?
There's been some personnel changes in the Boulder Police Department. They brought in a new chief maybe 3 years ago from the outside, which was good. We met with her. We're impressed. Slow process, but about the time we thought, hey, we're making some progress here, she took another job. So there's the assistant, her deputy chief of police is now the interim chief of police. Good guy. We met with him. But he's interim. He's hoping he can get the full-time job, but we don't know. So it's kind of in a park mode right now. I don't see that there's going to be much progress. But what you said, both of you, is exactly on target as far as I'm concerned. We've never criticized the Boulder Police for not having experience. They didn't have a homicide department. They didn't need one. Bless that.
Yeah.
But they refused to help that was offered in the very beginning. Denver police offered 2 experienced homicide detectives full-time to come to Boulder. They refused that help. That was within days. And so that's been going on almost for 28 years. So it's been very frustrating. But you're exactly right. That's
on target.
Open it up. I looked at this Idaho case, and that sheriff, or that chief of police did exactly the right thing. He got,
right from the beginning. From the beginning, which was
anybody
great.
could get his hands on, he brought him in.
Yeah.
And within 3 weeks, they had
We're out of time for tonight. John Ramsey, thank you so
Yes,
much
sir.
for joining us. Appreciate it,
Thank you.
Joseph.